The story begins with a white-haired, round spectacles-wearing man walking up to scores of ruthless, armed gangsters, all ready to face him. But that's not an issue for this quiet and composed assassin, who single-handedly takes out all of his foes in a matter of minutes, in a variety of creative yet lethal ways. Who is he? He is Taro Sakamoto, a legendary assassin feared by every hitman, and at the same time respected by every hitman as well. However, that all changed one fateful day, when this cold-hearted killer met the girl of his dreams and felt an emotion he had never felt before: love. Sakamoto retired, and the pair soon after married and had a little girl, and the legendary assassin eventually got fat. Fast forward to present day, and a blonde young man shows up at the convenience store that Sakamoto runs alongside his wife. It's just another regular day. One of the local kids is messing around in the store when a man enters the shop with a not-so-friendly looking face. The little boy trips and spills his ink on the man's white pants. The mean-looking man picks the kid up by his collar. However, amidst the boy's struggle to break free, he plants a solid print of his ink-covered shoe on the poor man's pants. The mean-mugged man, infuriated by this, gets ready to hit the kid for real when suddenly Sakamoto grabs his wrist and abruptly jams his pen right into the man's throat. Or so he imagines in his terrifying mind. His deadly ways don't go unnoticed, as the blonde man from earlier praises Sakamoto for the splendid manner in which he was about to dispatch the enemy. He then introduces himself as Shin, the psychic hitman. Sakamoto quickly throws a strong palm punch to the right of Shin's jaw. However, this turns out to be another crazy work of his rather violent yet vivid imagination. Shin requests Sakamoto refrain from murdering everyone in his imagination so quickly and recognize his old partner. Shin tells Sakamoto how shocked he was when he found out Sakamoto left the assassin business behind and instead opened up a convenience store with his wife. The once legendary assassin, who made hardcore gangsters quiver in their boots, was now making his cheeks jiggle every time he moved his face. Shin expresses his disappointment in seeing Sakamoto like this as he begins to light his cigarette. However, before he can even bring his lighter up, with a swift swipe using his cutter, Sakamoto slices the cigarette in half, letting Shin know that he was surely not someone to be judged based on their looks, as he still had that killer instinct in him. Sakamoto then gets called by a random man on a bicycle for some assistance in something, and Shin starts thinking perhaps he was still doing his assassin work in secret, although what he was doing was odd jobs for people all over town, from cutting branches to feeding babies, and even settling disputes among kids. Sakamoto really had hung up his boots. Shin is unimpressed, to say the least, at seeing his idol reduced to a town handyman, but he still couldn't help but get excited over seeing him again, since despite his weight and appearance, he was still the same Sakamoto inside. Shin then gets a call from his boss, asking him whether he was able to convince Sakamoto into returning to his old job. Upon learning that he couldn't, he orders Shin to carry out Plan B, which was to kill Sakamoto instead. As once you're a part of this business, your only exit is death. Shin tries to reason with him so he could let Sakamoto go as he was no longer a threat to him, but his boss remained adamant in carrying out his death sentence. Shin returns back to his apartment, takes a shower, and ponders the matter at hand. Someone else would take his place in taking out Sakamoto if he didn't, so Shin decides it would be better for him to go ahead with it than let somebody else. It's the next day, and Shin shows up at Sakamoto's shop, ready as he would ever be to finish his job as he preps his gun for the duty at hand. Shin enters the shop, ready to do his work as he pulls out his gun, telling Sakamoto he will be leaving town today and had to say goodbye. Sakamoto, calm as ever, spits out the cough drop he was sucking on into Shin's bullet's direction, diverting its trajectory. What ensues next is a deadly showdown between two trained assassins, although one of them is fat and uses cough drops and cream puffs to immobilize his enemy, and so he does brilliantly. Shin gets completely outskilled despite being the one with the functioning weapon, as Sakamoto throws Shin off balance with a perfectly timed cream puff and finishes him off with a thunderous kick that sends Shin crashing through the item shelves. Shin realizes his foolishness for underestimating the skill of the former legendary assassin as he becomes unconscious. However, Shin wakes up in the Sakamoto household, which is basically the upper compartment of their shop, and gets welcomed to dinner right away. Suspicious of the fine spread in front of him, Shin believes it to be poisoned, although that was no problem at all for him since he was trained to handle it. However, as he takes his first bite, his vision starts getting blurry and tears start flowing. This, though, was no poison in effect. Rather, it was the warmth of a dinner made with love and care that had Shin in such a state. It finally dawns on Shin why Sakamoto retired. He wanted to protect this warmth that he experienced in moments like this with his family. On his way back, Shin anxiously thanks Sakamoto for the meal, To which Sakamoto responds by pointing at a sign saying, "Come back again," and so Shin leaves defeated by Sakamoto yet again, this time with kindness. Shin then goes to his boss to plead for Sakamoto's pardon, going as far as groveling on the floor and begging he be spared. Upon his boss's asking, Shin explains Sakamoto had a family to go home to now, and he couldn't take that away from him. Shin instead offers up his own life in return for Sakamoto being let go. The boss accepts Shin's offer. However, he was lying and had no such intentions at all. Shin, being the psychic he is, hears this and takes out his gun, triggering an all-out war against his entire gang. Meanwhile, Sakamoto, listening in on the sticky situation Shin had gotten himself involved in, goes on his computer and unveils a secret, super cool weapon vault hidden within his normal-looking store, and packs his weapons. Back at the shootout, Shin does his best to hold out against the numerous gangsters he was up against. Using his psychic powers, he's able to predict enemy attacks before they can launch them and evade danger right in the nick of time. Down to his last magazine, Shin makes a desperate attempt to break out of there when a bullet suddenly pierces his leg, making him unable to escape. However, Shin is rescued from his grim fate by Sakamoto, who makes his entry by zapping 3 gangsters simultaneously with his taser. Sakamoto then demonstrates exactly why he is called the legendary assassin by stopping bullets using only his chopsticks. He then goes through his adversaries one after the other with ease, completely contrasting with his gentle, chubby appearance. In the final attempt at taking him out, the gangsters launch fire at him all at once, but Sakamoto, rapidly dodging them, takes his blades out and cuts the boss's gun in half before doing the same to him, and thus, in a short span of time, Sakamoto drops every gangster there and does it in style. Shin, seeing all this in person, realizes this was the legendary assassin Taro Sakamoto in action. Shin asks Sakamoto about how he found out where he was. Sakamoto takes Shin's guns and reveals a tracking bug he had placed inside it when Shin was taking his beauty sleep earlier. Shin then tells Sakamoto he meant what he said earlier about leaving town, but Sakamoto cuts him midway by throwing a shop apron at his face and offering him a job there at 800 yen per hour, with extra pay for overtime. And so began Shin's normal life as a helping hand at the Sakamoto's convenience store. Stay connected, like and subscribe for more fun recaps on One and Only Endless Recaps.